careful of that thing. If the light goes out, you've got about 3 seconds. Look out!
Thank you. Why?
Automatic reaction. I'm as surprised as you are.
Welcome to Blakes'7, The Way Back. I'm Dwayne.
I'm Todd.
I'm Philip.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Troy.
And today on the episode, we are going to be looking at the Series A episode, Episode 5, The Web. Perhaps, Philip, you could start us off by giving us some of the key facts about this episode.
Some of the key facts. Well, The Web was written by Terry Nation. Producer was David Maloney. The director was Michael E. Briant, who's back for his second story. Script editor, Chris Boucher. The designer was Martin Collins, also back for a second story. He also worked with Michael Bryant in the very first episode. Costume designs are by Barbara Lane, and the music and the theme song by Dudley Simpson. This was first screened in the UK on Monday, the 30th of January in 1978 at 7:15 p.m. It was commissioned November 1976. The location filming had taken place the previous November 23rd to 25th at Black Part in Fulmer, near the Pinewood Studios. And the studio recordings were the 12th and 13th of December 1977 in TC3. The audience is up again to 9.6 million, up another 700,000 from the previous week. The appreciation score was 66, and the chart position was 41, which is slightly smaller, slightly less than last week, even though the audience is up much higher.
Thank you very much, Philip. And Todd, what kind of information were we getting in our TV guides at the time?
Blake and his companions discover that Callan, their new crew member, has sabotaged the Liberator. Apparently out of control, the ship plunges on into uncharted space. There you go.
Thank you very much. Now, we're going to jump into Chris's first reactions in a moment, but since we had a special guest with us today in Troy, Troy, I just wanted to ask you just for a minute or two, what's your background in Blakes'7? Were you watching back in the day, or how did you get introduced to it?
No, I think I watched it from the beginning. We watched a lot of the ABC in my house, and I think I was already into Doctor Who, but I don't know if it's the very first run, but it would have been, if not the very first run, then the very first round of repeats. So I remember seeing this quite young and loving it.
So do you remember seeing this episode?
I remember seeing them all, I think, almost first time round. So I remember this episode mainly because I thought it was really creepy, and the noise of the squealing, crying, attack noises of the decimas kind of stayed with me. So, yeah, I remember this one. I would have been like 8 or something, 9, probably too young.
Probably. Looking very much forward to digging in a little bit deeper and finding out more of your thoughts on this episode. But before we do that, we're going to jump across, or we're going to go back in time and get Chris's initial thoughts on the episode.
Hey Chris, well, you're about to embark on The Web. What are you expecting from this episode?
Okay, well, The Web. I'm kind of thinking conspiracy, some kind of conspiracy. I haven't read the blurb, I don't know, but I can't see it being about a web. So when I think of I'm thinking there's some kind of conspiracy. Maybe Kelly is not who they think she is, and I don't know. So that's the vibe I've got at the moment. Yeah.
Good. Now, you've been enjoying the journey so far. What would you hope to see in another episode? Are you hoping for something similar to in a previous episode, or are you looking for something new?
I do want to learn more about the characters. So we haven't learned a lot about all of them yet. So I do like the backstories of characters. So I'd like to see some more of that.
Okay, so looking for backstory and some sort of conspiracy going on. So probably a Federation story.
Well, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, if there's some kind of conspiracy, or there would have to be something like that. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go watch the web then.
All right, great.
Okay, Chris, you've just watched the web. Was it what you expected?
No, not at all. It literally was about a web. No, I was thinking, I'm not going to say it's about a web. I don't think they're going to do a story about a web. That would be too much like the Web of Fear from Doctor Who, and I'm not going to go there. I think they'd do something different. And no, it was about a web. So I did like the story. The creatures on the planet immediately made me think of Death to the Daleks, from Doctor Who and the Exelons, from the colour of their skins. And I thought of them first, and then the way they spoke and the way they were moving, I thought of Ewoks. So I did look that up, and I was interested to find out the episode was directed and by, I can't remember who the name was, but it was the same director who directed Death to the Daleks, and also was written by Terry Nation, who also wrote that. So I thought that was pretty cool. This episode, I really liked it. I liked the film work down on the location.
Did you get a bit of the character development you were hoping to see? Some more character development?
Well, yes, we learned a little bit more about Callie, which was good. I like Jenna a lot, but we haven't learnt much more about her from this episode. So there's still more. There's still other characters that I'd like to learn more about. Yeah. Avon, I probably like him the most so far, but I don't know whether he's going to turn evil or not. I like his snide remarks.
Yes,
I think
Chris Boucher, the script director, certainly gave him the best lines.
Yes, yeah, and he delivers them quite well. It's just there's this evilness almost behind. It's not. I wouldn't say it's evil, but not yet. But I do think he becomes a protagonist, or I've got a feeling that maybe him and Blake do go on opposite sides later on, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens. Great, your thoughts. We will see you next time for Seek, Locate, Destroy.
Great, thank you.
I quite liked it. I think that it's perhaps a bit different from what's to come in terms of the focus on the Federation. So I enjoyed the fact that it seems to be like an early episode sort of finding their way. So I thought it was actually quite good.
Well, it's interesting because it's the first standalone episode. Because up until now, you've had 4 episodes all following on from each other, or which make a single movie, like we had the video compendium. So this is the first time we've stepped outside that. And in some ways, it's not where Blakes'7 will end up. It's a bit of an experiment. Terry Nation is trying something a bit different. I guess in part, this could actually be any other TV show. This could be Doctor Who. It could be Star Trek, the original series. It could be Battlestar Galactica. It's a fairly generic science fiction show. I enjoy it. I do remember the first time I saw it, I didn't, as a kid, I didn't particularly like this episode because I think by that stage I was into the Federation and the troopers and the gun battles, and to me this was a very strange sidestep. But coming to it now as a bit more of an adult, there's certainly a lot of things I do enjoy about it.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen this, and I've forgotten kind of how much I like it, and I think what I do like about it, I guess, it has a really nice, clear ethical dilemma, and it sets up Blake in a way as perhaps even more of an ethical hero than I think perhaps the last few episodes did. But I agree with Philip. I mean, this could easily have been an episode of Star Trek or something else, and it's just, swap out one situation can't play around with the Prime Directive, and it would have worked just as well as a Star Trek episode. So yeah, but I still liked it.
I found this very refreshing after Time Squad. As you may remember, I wasn't overly enamored with that particular episode. But I've often remembered that this episode is sort of called out by Blakes'7 fans as not being a favourite. And the more I watch it, the more I wonder why. And for me, I think, like you, Philip, I think it's a case of at the end of Time Squad on the original VHS compilation, Blake says, "Let's go to Kentaro." The next compilation starts at the beginning of Seek, Locate, Destroy, where they're at Kentaro. And so the web seems to be this story that never it was supposed to exist. It's like this little sort of, not a coda as much as, this throwaway episode. Yeah, but it was, I think there's much more to this episode than meets the eye. And I seem to like it more every time I watch it. Chris, have you had a chance to watch it again since your initial viewing? And what are your thoughts now?
Yeah, this is probably the one I've seen the most because it's actually probably my favourite episode. I really enjoyed it. I probably for the opposite reasons that Phil mentioned, that he was into the Federation and the star battles and things like that, and I'm not into that really. I like the creepy stuff and stuff that sort of sets up mythology, I guess, and this one does in a way with Callie, because it's giving you a bit of her backstory and a mythology of the lost people. So for that reason, I really quite like it. And you mentioned that it could be a generic episode of Doctor Who or something. Well, it actually really reminded me of Death to the Daleks the first time I saw it. So it had that reminiscence for me as well. So yeah, I really liked it. Still do.
Well, let's jump up onto the ship then. The first part of the episode is on the ship, the kind of possession aspects of it with Jan Chappell. What are our thoughts on Jan Chappell's possession acting? I, for one, thought it was really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, I think she does it well, and the camera works quite nice. So there's a certain way they do her point of view is off kilter, like everything's a little bit off kilter, so it works quite well. So yeah, I think she was having a lot more fun with this.
Yeah, I think the director choosing to use a handheld camera. I think that choosing to use a handheld camera has really made an interesting way of looking at it. And so being handheld, not a steady cam, it really is quite disjointed, and that really helps with the filming. I think, yeah, Michael E Briant's certainly done a lot of excellent stuff in this directing again. Callie, I think Jan Chappell does an amazing performance. My only concern is we don't really know her yet. Like, she only joined the show, she was 30 minutes into the last episode, so she's been in the show for 15 minutes. And within the first minute of the next show, she's hunting down the crew and starting to knock down Villa and set bombs. I think it was actually a very dangerous move, because it could have made us really dislike this character. Now, I think it must be Jan's winning way that we actually don't turn against her. Jenna does. I think Jenna's view is, let's just throw out the local airlock. But it's interesting that we actually stay on Callie's side. But it is interesting that I'm not sure it's a good choice to make with a character we don't yet know, having her hunting down the crew.
That's my concern. Is that straight away I kind of thought, this is really bizarre that they're just going straight into this with her when we don't really know her. Nobody should really trust her at all, quite frankly. So those first few minutes, it is a strange choice to make, I think, with a new character on board, that we haven't really got to know what she's actually really like before something like this happens.
Better keep her sedated and locked up or dumped.
You should have never brought her on the ship.
Yeah, it's all very well going back in retrospect and knowing the character she's to become, but we've got to remember that this was just brand new. So yeah, it was. You're all right. It was very interesting. My thought was, what's she doing? What if the planet is trying, or those on the planet are trying to call her to it? Why is she trying to sabotage the ship? Or was it just, did anyone pick up on what that bomb actually was? Because the bomb itself actually induced some very interesting running styles from Avon, and particularly Gareth Thomas as Blake. What's with the floppy hands, that run? He had that run all the way through the series, and I always found it pretty amusing. But what was she doing with that bomb?
Well, she was sabotaging the drive units so they'd be a bit slower, so it'd be caught in the web or something. But yeah, I mean, there's a few things in here that don't add up to. Yeah, there's a few things that don't quite add up in here, which I certainly made note of, and we'll no doubt get to. That's one of.
She was blowing up the visuals, wasn't she? So they couldn't see where they were. So that was part of her plan. And then there's something to do with the drive. Terry Nation will come back to this in a few episodes' time, and he'll actually do a better job with blowing up drives and communications and things. But you can see the earlier onslaught trying something which doesn't quite work here, but will in the future.
Zen made a comment early on that I thought was interesting. That he said,
"Preemptive interference in crew activity is forbidden."
So is he not part of the crew yet? Is there any? You've read the books, Philip, so you might know a bit more detail than what the flash that you get on the screen.
Well, the trouble with this episode is it's not in the books.
Oh, okay.
So the book has the first 4 episodes. This one episode's left out of the book, so then we start again with the next episode for 4 or 5 stories. I'm not quite sure which it is. I'm still about to start reading the next book for next time. Zen's obviously a bit more on their side than he was initially. I mean, Terry Nation, you can feel Terry Nation is still working out his characters and what he wants to do with them. Zen started off being a much more of an enigma, much more difficult.
Wisdom must be gathered. It cannot be given.
Here, it's he's willing to help after it blows up the bomb, but he's not willing to stop the bomb in the first time. So there's all sorts of little things happening, but not quite there yet.
Doesn't Avon explain that? Avon says,
Computer logic. Until the bomb explodes, there's nothing for the repair system to repair.
I felt very sorry for David Jackson in this episode. He had virtually nothing to do apart from creep up on Callie at one point and get the gun off her. And even Avon at one point said, "Gan, you should appreciate slow." I thought that was really insulting, but a bit sad for the character. So he's really, since I've started this podcast with you guys, I'm really noticing how little Gan has to do. I always liked the character, but just noticing how little he has to do.
Michael Keating doesn't have much to do in this either, though. He's just kind of goofy in a chair or knocked out.
I mean, Callie's only been at, like you said, 30 minutes, and we already know more about her people and the Lost than we do about Gan. He's been in it since, episode 2?
Yeah.
Maybe after his performance last episode, they just decided that they were going to reduce his role. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. It's really awful because I liked Gan before I started this rewatch. I'm now 5 episodes in, and I'm not. I don't like him at all.
Yeah.
I do think Terry Nation really did not know how to write for that many characters, and he's obviously struggling. I think things will pick up later when next season when Terry Nation doesn't write them all, because I think it's just too much of a workload to be trying to run so many characters, and they haven't quite worked out the fact that you can. Well, they kind of work out soon that they can have feature 1 or 2 characters and change them over, but it usually works out just being Blake, Jenna, Aaron, and Callie with a little bit from Villa, and poor Gan nothing at all. So, and that's basically what we see in this episode. Those 4 get the lion's share of everything, but there's not much left over for other people. What do people think about Avon saving Blake and knocking him to the ground, and his reaction about it? I'm as surprised as you are.
I love that.
Well, I thought this is the start. This is the point where I started to think I had the wrong impression of Avon and that he wasn't actually going to be turning into the bad guy. So I think here he's starting to sort of soften a little bit.
I agree with you, Chris. But I also think we've had some instances where he actually has said some things, but then just done the opposite and saved the crew or saved somebody in the last few episodes as well. He's a lot of talk, but then when it comes to actually doing things, he's perhaps not as ruthless at this point as we're led to believe. So I think it's great that he does save Blake, but all the tension over that bomb and all that sort of stuff, and Jenna slapping Callie and all that, I think is great.
So do I.
It was obviously, because they did make it that it was the other woman who slapped Callie, and sort of she was the one who was distrusting of Callie as well the entire time. The men seemed to forgive her straight away, even though it was Jenna who said, "Oh, I could tell she was being possessed by her eyes." She still seemed to be the one who was more suspicious of Callie the entire time than the guys. They just seemed to forgive her straight away. I thought that was, pitting the girls against each other.
I mean, if you listen to the interview that we did with Selena Vet, she talked about meeting Terry Nation and him apologizing to her that he didn't know how to write for women. And I think, once again, if we see this episode, he really doesn't know how to write for women. He sets them up so that they're antagonistic, and even at this moment, he's still wanting something happening between Jenna and Blake. We also get the first inklings of something strange between Callie and Avon, because there's that sort of bizarre little flirting there. And the thing that gets me, and I still keep watching, trying to work out what is going on in Paul Dale's mind, is that scene when he just stares at her.
Why do you want to know that?
I'm interested in your work.
Yes. Well, I suppose I better go and see what it is that Blake wants.
What do people think that look? Because it's a 10-second look that he does to Callie. What do people think were going on with that in his mind with that 10 seconds?
Maybe he's just, looking at all the different possibilities, because there's just obviously something not quite right about her. And Jen acted that so subtly, it came across, and I think it worked as a result. And so Avon could easily see that there was a problem. So I think he had a lot to think about in that 10 seconds. But why he chose to walk away, and then he seemed to forget about it when he got back to the flight deck, and it took something else for him to make him think that it was Callie when that clicked. So by the time he walked from where she was back to the flight deck, he'd kind of forgotten about it again.
Yeah, I'm sort of the same as Dwayne there. I kind of thought he was taken aback maybe that she was there. It wasn't usual for her to be in that room with him. So, and then she was just asking some strange questions. I mean, she'd only just joined the crew, so that's kind of the way I took it as well. I haven't picked up on. Did you hint that there's some kind of romance or something between Avon and Callie?
I think she was flirting with him. I think there was a flirt.
She was totally flirting
on that at all.
Thank you. I'm glad it's not just me.
There's a rude word phrase that we used to use for staring at people like that. That's probably too rude for this podcast.
Probably.
Would the look that she's looking at Villa equate to the same thing? That crazy staring look as she's walking up to him?
Oh,
No.
No, she's about to clobber him, isn't she?
Yeah, that's right.
But she needs something from Avon. She needs information. She needs to know what he's working on. So she needs something from him. So she uses that approach to get it. And it works.
Refresh my memory too, but the telepathy's used between after Jenna slaps Callie, she telepathically says thank you to her. Is that used much throughout the whole series? I don't recall it being so. Is that a case of forgetting about that ability, or just using it enough and not overusing it, like a certain sonic screwdriver that we know and love?
I guess we're going to see on our way through. That's certainly something we need to be watching out for, without spoilers. But yeah, it's good to see that the second episode she's in, they're still using the telepathic abilities. They're using the mind control from the other planet, from the people. So they're continuing at the moment. The fact she's got those abilities, but we will see it a couple more times, yes. But I don't think she uses as much as maybe that she could have done. But then once again, every time she knew there was danger, oh, look out, here they come, then it would sort of you lose some of the effect.
I thought there was a moment there when Jenna was possessed too. I thought the lip syncing there was brilliant.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. I thought she was fantastic. Like, I thought, did they actually use a voice modulator, or did she actually lip sync that? Because it was spot on.
It was the other actor, and he'd actually recorded the day before. He wasn't even in studio. So he'd simply recorded it. She'd gone away and she'd practiced with the recording over and over again, and then just did it live.
The very first scene, though, when she's all bug-eyed, I thought that was hilarious. And then she tones it down a little bit, and it really has an impact. But that very first shot, I remember that vividly, just laughing at it.
She had the hands going too and everything, didn't she? So one other thing I noticed from this episode that was new was the costumes. I thought the costumes were much more colourful, more interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever seen any costumes in science fiction like it. I think Blakes'7's pretty unique in that regard, to have that kind of darker 70s colours.
Yeah.
Usually in 70s sci-fi, if you went in futuristic, you'd go bright and white and plastic. But these are all fabric and darker tones. And I really like, particularly Jenna's costume, I thought was sensational. Did anyone have any thoughts on the costumes in this one?
I just wrote some notes. Jenna, new dress looks great. But I also wrote, oh, Blake has his shirt unbuttoned.
I think that this is the beginning of them starting to look like Space ABBA because of those outfits. They're sort of early ABBA and early Blakes'7. I can see a correlation. There's lots of satin.
You may have noticed that actually for the first time I added the costume designer in. I haven't been giving the costume designer each episode. This is the first time I mentioned Barbara Lane. And I think part of the reason I put her in was because the costumes really did stand out. And we're going to get the first time we now have their planet costumes too. They've all been made a costume for when they go on planet. Yeah. So it's the same sort of design, but in different colours. And Barbara has very much designed it to be like Robin Hood. Gareth is green as Robin Hood. David Jackson will be like Friar Tuck in his costume. Avon will be in red, like the Sheriff of Nottingham, like the villain. And so she's actually designed all the costume colours to be Robin Hood and the Merry Men, all the baddies, with that in mind. And so you've got the planet costumes, but also the things on the ship is happening. But that being said, it's by next season, the costumes will get ridiculous, but they're still fun to talk about.
I mean, I have to compare it a bit to Doctor Who, where we've just had a season with Leela, who wears generally the same kind of thing all the time. And ultimately, in Doctor Who, when it hits the 80s, the companions will wear the same sort of thing. So it's really, I love it when they all wear something different, and the girls, the ladies, get to wear something different. It's a nice aspect to the show.
And I think there were certain areas of the Liberator that we saw that we saw more of, if not more detail. We saw more areas than we had seen before. Maybe we can touch on that a bit later. Was there anything else you wanted to mention about the actual possession part of the episode before we move down to the planet?
It is interesting that only the women get possessed, I thought.
Do you think that they're making a statement they're weaker, easier to take over? Is he making a sort of sexist statement, or is it just accidental?
I don't know, but I have thoughts about their use of taking over people and why they use it sometimes and not others, which no doubt we'll get to.
Or it's Callie's the telepath and Jenna's the pilot, maybe?
I don't know, maybe.
Teleport down to the planet. And I thought the design of the planet was simple but extremely effective. What have we got? One of these survival domes as the main area, but you've got all these wispy webs all over the place, and the lighting in the forest was just incredible.
I thought it was really effective as well. They had, like you said, the webs. They had those big ball things that made me think that they were spider eggs, to be honest.
They could be decima eggs. I half wonder whether the decimas might hatch out of those things.
I never thought of that. Yeah, that might be right. I just assumed because they were spider webs, I just assumed they were spider eggs, even though we never see any spiders and we know that the webs have nothing to do with the spiders either. That's just what was in my head. Yeah, I thought it was really effective. Really liked it a lot.
I guess because we'd seen like the web in the space, I just thought, okay, it's a web, on the planet. It's all sort of connected, and I thought that was very effective. And the big round bally things I'd seen before in other things like the prisoner and that sort of thing. So I just sort of thought, oh, they're just there for effect. I didn't think anything was in them. They were just big round bally things to make it look like a space planet. So I just liked it. I didn't think too much about it.
I do think the opening tracking shot where you first see the planet and then the dome, I thought that was done really well. And when you've got those creepy whispering voices behind it, I thought that was really, really effective.
The banging and everything. It's a beautiful opening shot, isn't it? Which really sets the scene. Beautifully filmed. I understand that the designer had deliberately picked up on the in the script where Blake has that fungus put on him to heal his hand. And so the designer had come up with the concept that this technology that they use is all fungus-based. And so everything that the design was done was based on the idea of fungus and fungi, so that the part of the wisp and all the spider webs and things was based on the idea of fungus. and the way it grows, and even the decimas, their shape and the material they're made out of was supposed to make you think of that sort of fungus sort of feeling. So that the whole technology is fungus based.
That's great.
When Blake and Avon arrive on the planet, I mean, I don't want to spoil my MVP, but I love the relationship that's starting to happen between Blake and Avon here. We've already had, some of the dialogue between them on the ship, indicating that there's deeper things going on there, and it doesn't really stop all the way through this episode. So I love the relationship between those two. When it comes to the decimas, do we love the decimas, or are they funny? Are they too funny?
I do. I like them.
Yeah.
I thought they were cute.
I thought that was scary. The noise helped.
Did?
Yeah. The noise they make. Like scary, upsetting, not terrifying, but upsetting.
Yeah.
Once again, I think Barbara Lane's done an amazing job with the costume design. So she's created with the costume no necks and no shoulders. And so the shape just isn't quite right. And so, not only are they actors of reduced height, but because of the costume taking away neck and taking away shoulders, the whole body shape isn't quite right. So still got legs and arms, but just changing the top of them really affects how you see them and view them. So I think it's a very effective way of making a different sort of creature.
Do you know what she made them out of? Because I recognised it when I saw it earlier today. I rewatched it again, and I saw them from the back running towards the domes. And do you know what they were made out of?
Zygons.
No.
That's it. Yeah, they were old Zygon outfits repainted.
Really? She just cut them
You can tell
down?
when they're running. Yeah, you can tell when they're running towards the ship. They've got it looks like they look Zygons. Yeah,
That was my notes to say that I thought they looked like an Ewok Zygon type thing, just in miniature, just the whole top of it just cut down.
I did question that when I was researching, because I did come across that fact too, because the actors are little people, and Deep Roy is the main decima. And I thought, weren't the Zygons like normal size people, like pretty much? And so I don't know. I thought that was a little bit strange, because I would have thought a Zygon would have been way too big for Deep Roy to fit into.
But some of the close-ups later on, when they look like they're crying, are really quite disturbing.
Yeah.
I felt sorry for them then. I didn't find it disturbing. I felt really sorry for them, and I agreed with Blake and was on Blake's side, and I thought them cyborg avatar kind of things were. I couldn't wait till he destroyed them, to be honest.
I couldn't help but notice that all of the shots, the close-up shots of Decima's faces, you could tell by the eyes that was Deep Roy every time. In pretty much all the cases, even the Decima that was killed was Deep Roy. And then the Decima that came and cried over the dead Decima was Deep Roy again. So I guess they're trying to make them seem similar. But I was looking carefully to see if I could see the eyes of any of the other actors, but I couldn't. It was always Deep Roy when we got to see him front on, which we'll talk about in a moment. We get inside the dome, and we meet Navara and Gila. The two people in silver, the costumes, all the costumes in this were great, except these ones were having a lot of problems, I believe, throughout the recording of this. The plastic bits kept falling off. They were just silver overalls, and the plastic bits kept falling off. What do we think of these characters?
Yeah, they're just autonomous, really, sort of things that the other little head thing is manifesting. And they just seem to be just whatever that creature wants them to do. That's what they do. They don't really have any of their own thoughts or anything.
When you saw the little creature with the little legs, little spindly legs, what was his name? Simon, wasn't it?
Simon. Yeah.
There was one particular Doctor Who story that I thought of.
Colony in Space.
Absolutely.
Also directed by Michael E. Briant.
Yep.
So there you go.
Same director.
Same director.
So what's the chances of that?
Navarro and Gila, I sort of quite liked them. I thought they were interesting and mysterious when I first saw them. I remember seeing the third chair behind the other two, and I thought, is there one missing? But I think that was just so Blake had somewhere to sit later on when they talked to him. But as a kid, I found that head in a jar thing really, really spooky. Like, really, I reckon looking back now, I think they focused too much on it. But I would have held that back and had the sort of mystery of the two of them running the show for most of it. But yeah, I found that really, really creepy as a kid. This kind of head in a jar. It's like, no. The spindly little legs. Yeah, it's like I don't know. Very, very creepy.
Yeah, looking at it in today's eyes, it's not the greatest. But I was sitting there thinking, well, back in 1977 or 78, it would have been on an analog TV, possibly black and white. It probably was a lot more effective back then. So I'm glad Troy said that he found it creepy back then, because I can imagine it was creepy back then. But now in HD, it's not that effective. You can see it's a guy pushing his head through a hole in a wall. So it amused me. Yeah.
And Philip, there's lots of exposition in these scenes. But I think it was interesting exposition. So we're getting lots of talk about the R&R, who they are, the experiments, what they're doing, and to get that so early on, we're really filling out Callie's story. Well, not Callie's story, but a little bit about her backstory quite early on.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot of world building, and one of the things Terry Nation does do very well is build worlds and build concepts. So I'm not sure his dialogue is always sparkly. I think thankfully for Chris Boucher, he comes in. But in terms of setting scenes, creating stories, setting up worlds, I think Terry Nation is really good at that. He does. I mean, he keeps dipping in. I mean, that head in the jar was making me think a bit of Keys of Marinus, and it's the morphogens in the jars, the brains, the jars. He does often like to go back, and I'm sure there'll be more Terry Nation tropes we can talk about later. In terms of those two main characters, though, I guess the first time I met them, I thought they were a bit dull and boring. But then when you work out they're just avatars for this creature in a jar, and I think that jar effect's actually quite effective. Maybe if there'd been a few more bubbles running through the things, he was a lot more hidden. But I do remember as a kid trying to work out how did they do that? Like, how did they have this thing in a jar? And thinking that because it feels like he's in the water, and how is he talking in the water? And so I do think that it's pretty effective. And once again, it's a nice little set they designed, which that rescue set on the outside and the inside, it's clean and organized and structured, unlike the mess that's outside. So it is very scientific. But once again, Terry Nation does love his scientific bases, doesn't he? And his scientific equipment that turns up over and over again in different storylines, and also just the fact that the genetic alterations. That once again, there's another big theme of Terry Nation's. The decimars were created with 10 functions, because that's what deci means. Yeah. Like December's the 10th month of the year. I know it's not, but don't worry about that. Should have been. Deci means 10, and they're designed with just 10 functions. But what becomes obvious very early on is that they're more than 10 functions. So in some ways, it's almost like the Genesis of the Daleks when Harry and the Doctor are walking through the genetic caves of the giant clam, and where the Davros has given them different functions and different amounts of functions. Here we once again have that idea of the functions, and just spoilers, just the fact that just like Genesis of the Daleks, the creation turned against the creator and killed him. Once again, we have the creations turn against their creator and kill him at the end. So not that Terry ever uses ideas more than once.
Never. I mean, I think even the web was described as meant to be something else, but it was a mutation, because we know Terry loves a mutant.
I think it's really disturbing that the six, like, their bodies reverted and just the minds live on. Just that whole, I find it really disturbing. They've all just sort of gone into that one gestalt sort of thing.
I think the main idea behind this was, biological machines, really. So, because Avon makes that comment at the end, biological machines will never replace mechanical ones. They're far too unpredictable. And I think this story demonstrated it really well. But the crew is yet to escape the web. But once they do get away from the base, Avon and Blake are back on the Liberator, and we'll visit them in a moment. But first, we have a segment in the podcast that we like to call Who's on Who? Okay, right, now it's my job to get the numbers from you, gents, as to how many of the actors in this episode you think were in Doctor Who outside of the main cast. There is one main cast member that I have missed in the past. I've talked about him before. I'll let you try and work out who that is and whether he's been in Doctor Who or not and how many times. So how many people, Todd, do you think have been in Doctor Who in this episode?
2.
2? What about you, Philip?
I can recognise 2, but there's probably more than.
Okay. And Chris, what do you reckon?
3.
You're pretty good at recognising these actors. Troy, what about you?
Yeah, I've got 3. Possibly even
3?
4 if you think about Big Finish, but 3 in the show, 3 in the actual show, televised show.
We do think about Big Finish in this, but I will tell you first of all that the main cast member that I've forgotten in the past is Peter Tuddenham, and he, of course, has been in Doctor Who. He played voices. He hasn't physically been in Doctor Who, but The Ark in Space, Mask of Mandragora, and Time and the Rani. What a trifecta of stories for Peter Tuddenham to be famous for in Doctor Who. Who else do you think? Miles Fothergill. He played Navara. Who was Miles Fothergill?
T7 in Robots of Death.
And he's playing the same way. You wouldn't know it was a different
Same
character.
acting.
Same acting, same
Yeah, I
voice.
picked his voice. I got his.
I'm sorry, I
got his voice.
I did not recognise him at all.
You didn't recognise the voice?
Recognise him. I didn't recognise him at all in terms of the performance or anything. It was only the name in the credits, and I went, I know that name. So that's how I recognised him. Otherwise, I would have just stick to one, and that would have been Deep Roy. And even then, I had to look at the credits as well.
Well, let's move to Deep Roy then, who plays the main Decima. He had 2 credits in television Doctor Who. Do you know what they were?
Mr. Sin.
And Mind Warp.
Mind Warp. I knew you'd know, Troy. If anyone's going to know, it'd be you. He was the Posicarian delegate. I think the little delegate with the big teethy smile on his face in Mind Warp. I think that was Deep Roy as well.
Quite a small role, yeah.
Gila, Ania Marson, she hasn't been in television Doctor Who, but the closest she got was a Big Finish. She was in, strangely enough, she was in a Torchwood range that was released this year called Inseparable. So it was Yvonne Hartman and whoever the character Tim Bentinck plays, one of the Torchwood 1 episode. So that's as close as she got to Doctor Who. So technically, no. But Richard Beale plays the little fella with the legs. He's been in quite a few Doctor Who episodes. The first time he appeared was in The Ark. He played the Refusian voice, the invisible voice. He played Bat Masterson in The Gunfighters as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
He was a voice again in The Macra Terror. And he had a screen part in The Green Death as the Minister of Ecology.
I remember that.
So he was in Doctor Who 4 times. So there you go. Pretty much everyone in that cast, apart from the extra decimas that weren't Deep Roy, had parts in Doctor Who or related to Doctor Who. So there you go. So that's this instalment of Who's on Who. Okay, we are back up on the Liberator from the planet of the Lost. Is that what we can call it? I don't think the planet was ever named, but I like the sound of that, Planet of the Lost.
That works. We've
had a bit of a backstory about that. The Liberator crew still have to get out of the web. Is it the first time they've used the neutron blasters in the Liberator? I don't think it's something that they use too often, but we do get them used here. Is that right?
First time, I think.
Did you notice there was extra scenery in the Liberator that we hadn't seen before? There was a few extra rooms that were used there, a few different points of view that we hadn't seen before.
This is actually the first time that the entire set's been correctly assembled. So up until now, they've been using backdrops for the main flight deck. That includes the corridors leading in and out of the different entranceways, which is why they've used the corridors to run around. So yeah, before now, the set wasn't complete. So now the set is finally complete for the first time.
One thing I noticed Gan had to do is he was able to sit there with some sunglasses and a Walkman. Did you notice that? That was pretty cool.
That set from the first episode came. The Walkman that they used in the very first episodes come back.
Yeah.
It's going to make another appearance soon too with Callie later on.
I was just going to say, I noticed with the corridors when they're running around, you can see there's a white sheet at the end of one of them. And it's just, it looks very unfinished. And you see it a couple of times. But so that felt a little cheap. But on the other hand, when you have that point of view character, when you're point of view shot, when you're watching Callie plant that bomb, and then again, when Blake and Avon are trying to take it away, you've actually got the sort of infrastructure of another corridor. I guess it's really just a thing they're hanging over the camera to make it look good. So I feel like for every cheap shot, there was some really good shots as well.
There was the destruction of the dome as well down on the planet, which I thought was quite a horrific scene.
I always found the noise the Decimas made really creepy, but obviously it goes up to 11 during that attack. But I think the most upsetting thing was, I think Gila, like Navarre and Gila, they've been attacked and etc. And then you kind of see that they seem like they've been, stripped back to a skeleton. But when one of the Decimas kind of kicks Gila's head away like it's a soccer ball, I mean, I found that really, really creepy. I still remember that. I still think it's a bit creepy now.
I think it's absolutely horrific that they just get pulverized into dust, and the screeching of the Decimas, those last 5 minutes just got to me watching it this time. I had to go and turn the volume completely down. It was just horrific.
It's very effective. I think it's very effective. Yeah.
But it is interesting that they just happen to leave the door so they can get straight in.
I thought it came to a conclusion really quickly. Like we sort of, the first sort of 3/4 of the whole episode seemed to not drag on, but it was nicely paced. And then suddenly everything's destroyed and they're beaming back up to the ship and they're on their way. I thought that was one thing that I still find a bit weird about the episode.
I think there's a moral dilemma, and Blake could have spent just a little bit more time with the ethics of, I can't save the ship if I save the Decimas or something, but the Decimas come in because someone's left the bloody door open. So like that, his true ethical dilemma never kind of properly gets explored because the Decimas come in and the sort of decision in a way is taken out of his hands.
Our cast member focus of the week is Michael Keating.
Very delicate. With hands like that and a decent upbringing, he might have made a respectable pickpocket.
Yes.
So Michael Keating was born in Edmonton, London, and of course we know him here as Villa in Blakes'7, but he's also Gaudry in Doctor Who in The Sunmakers just a few months earlier to this. He's been in Yes, Minister. He was also in an episode of Casualty with Gareth Thomas. He has done Doctor Who audios for Big Finish, The Twilight Kingdom, and The Year of the Pig. He also was in EastEnders, playing a recurring character, Reverend Stevens, for quite some time, from 2005 to 2017.
Yeah, he used to turn up every year or two and marry someone or bury someone.
That was something new to me. London's Burning, The Bill, Casualty. So quite a lot of television credits there. And of course, with all the CD dramas, so like, the Blakes'7 dramas, Blakes'7, A Rebellion Reborn, The Liberator Chronicles, The Classic Adventures, The Worlds of Blakes'7. So certainly, keeping in touch with the show. I don't have very much on theatre at all. He's done a couple of films, Julius Caesar and Micromen. That's it.
Thank you very much, Todd. It's interesting, the Blakes'7 Reborn series. I'd forgotten that he was the only original cast member that came back, wasn't he? Everything else was recast. No doubt we'll cover that in due course, Philip.
At some point.
All right, going from one Michael to another, Philip and I had the opportunity to have a chat with Michael E Briant, the director of The Web, a little while ago, so we're going to share some of that interview on this particular episode right here.
So the second story you worked on was The Web. When did you first get the script for that, and what did you think of the script?
I don't remember when the script plonked onto my desk. I thought The Way Back was a terrific script. I really did. I thought it was absolutely marvellous. I thought The Web was shades of Doctor Who, in as much as it was much more, rather than politically based, rather than character based, rather than being driven by relationships, being driven by that, it was more driven by futuristic circumstances. I thought I can't remember what the name of the characters were, but the little characters, I thought they appeared to me to be, I was originally going to cast kids. I thought, well, okay, we'll get little children dressed up. Were they called No, they weren't called Excelons.
The Decimas.
Decimas, yeah, they're Decimas.
Yeah,
Decimas.
Decimas. Yeah, the Decimas. I had a real problem with the Decimas. I didn't know. Clearly, you couldn't just have short actors doing it. It needed to be genuinely small actors. So I started off with the idea of having kids. Then, as either my PA or whatever pointed out to me, we'd have to get licenses for them, and we'd have to work under children's contracts for them, and that meant the hours that they could work would be limited, and blah, 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 blah. And then somebody, I think it was actually Chris Barry down the corridor, or some other director said, have you worked with
Deep Roy?
Yeah, somebody said, have you ever worked with Deep Roy? And I went, wow, no, I've never worked with him, know of him. Deep is terrific. Deep is great. And I think I think Deep came in to see me. And then I discovered that there were a whole bunch of equity small actor people, actors. So that was perfect. So that sort of solved the size problem. And then I had the problem of the location. And I went, I don't want another quarry. I don't want another... Oh, it needed to be done. The budget was tight then. The budget had tightened up, and it needed to be somewhere in range of Television Centre. There was no money for going away. So somebody suggested we did the park beside Pinewood Studios. Borehamwood Park, is it called? Which has got a lake by it. And I was taken out there by my PA, and I looked at it and went, yeah, okay. So we could do this, but the thing to do is to try to make it. So with the designer, I went Tinseltown. I want tinsel. I want tinsel everywhere. I want everything to be glitter and tinsel, just like off a Christmas tree, okay? I want everything in the trees to be tinsel trees. And those balloons that they had in The Prisoner, McGowan's The Prisoner, I think we could have those balloons. He said, why? I said, well, why not? I mean, why wouldn't there be balloons? Giant balloons, not party balloons, but giant balloons. Why wouldn't there be giant balloons and tinsel and all that? So the web became sort of more and more exciting as I went from, suddenly I'm acting with not children, which are a pain in the butt, but I'm acting with proper actors, proper crowd of actors. I've now got Tinseltown all over this pine forest, and the dome went back to the extension of Colony in Space, where the designer had told me about hexagonal domes, where apparently if you use hexagonal pieces, you can make them any size. It's something to do with the circumference. And if they're hexagonals, you can keep sticking them together and get it bigger and bigger. Anyway, so we ended up with this dome. And then the style of acting for the two characters, the brother and sister. I thought
Novara and Gila, Miles Forth the Grill and
and
Yeah.
Liam Marson.
I've got to say, as a Doctor Who fan, it was nice to see Miles Fothergill, because you'd cast him the year before in the Robots of Death. It was
That's
strange
right.
to see him without his mask as
Yeah.
SV7. So,
Yeah.
but it was, he's got a great voice, that Miles.
But Robots was important because it proved that having real actors being in the robots made an enormous difference to that production. I would absolutely swear. And having them speaking the stuff in sync. So Miles was an actor whose work I liked enormously, and he also had the style. I mean, if you're going to cast, if the character is a beautiful woman, you would be crazy not to cast a beautiful woman as the character. If the character is a 6'6" all-in wrestler, you would be crazy not to cast an actor who wasn't 6'6" and went to the gym. Acting can do so much. So Miles had a temperament and a style as a human being that when he starts acting the character, it just carries it forward. So the web was something which sort of, I think, mildly disappointed with the script because I don't think it had the quality and the depth of The Way Back, but fair enough. I did become just more and more enthusiastic about it for all these reasons that I've stated.
You did a lot of creative filming, a lot of handheld camera, a lot of POV shots. Part of it, if the script's lacking, is that a way of adding extra excitement and interest to what's going on?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Peter Hammond, who's a director, maybe, I don't know if you know Peter's work, but I mean, I was his PA on Cold Comfort Farm. And Peter said, the camera is the third person in the room. The camera is the camera. When you wanted to stop being radio with pictures, it is the camera that represents the other participant of the scene. So if you've got an action scene, the camera mustn't stand back and just look at it like a picture. The camera must be the third character involved in the scene and reflect what is going on. So the use of handheld, the use of crash zooms, the use of all that absolutely is making the viewer part of that, the observer, the audience, part of that scene. So yeah, I absolutely believe that the camera is an integral part of, particularly in action sequences. The camera has got to be in there and involved and be within, must be the third character in the scene. It must be the other. I've always tried to make the camera a participant of the scene, make the camera part of what is going on. Very hard in a TV studio because the scenery is only so high and there are lights and there are booms and everything else. So it's very difficult in a TV studio, but it is possible. And it's certainly possible. And on location, you'd be a clot if you didn't. But I mean, the end sequence where the Decimals are smashing the place up, I'm pretty sure you normally get 2 tape machines to record, one for the recording and one as a BBC safety backup copy. So I got permission for the last 15 minutes of the recording or the last half hour of the recording to have 4 recording machines coming from VT downstairs. And I linked the cameras. I linked 4 cameras, one to each one to each recording machine, so that when they were doing, so that was a purely edited sequence. And my instruction was, I had one camera, yes, doing a sort of very tight master shot, but the other cameras were all following certain characters and doing their own thing. So I shot it all in sync, and I just told them to you couldn't rehearse that. So I just told them to beat the place up, smash the set up, I think, were my intellectually high directorial instructions. So I said, smash the place up, break everything in sight, please, from when we say action, when we say go. And that's what they did. But I had 4 cameras covering it, recording it. And then in the edit, I put it all together, because otherwise it would have to be and there wasn't time for that. simply wasn't time for it. Getting your Blakes'7 recorded in the time for the money was actually harder than on a Doctor Who. It was tougher than a Doctor Who. Not quite sure why, but it was.
The Web is the first time you filmed on the Liberator set. What was it like as a set to film on?
It wasn't that easy, actually. I mean, it was fine. It was fine because it was quite wide open, so you could have, of your 3 or 4 studio cameras, you could have one on each corner and 2 in the middle, and you could do quite a lot. It was fine. I didn't have that much where, or at least I tried to avoid having people driving and doing controls and things like that for the reasons I've stated earlier. I didn't like the concept of space. Nobody flies a MiG-17 with, it's much more subtle than that. But no, it was fine. The Liberator set was fine. I thought it looked, Roger Murray Leach is a very, very talented designer, and he designed something which I'm sure all Blakes'7 fans know exactly what that set looks like, exactly where it is, and they probably even know where the actors are meant to sit on it. I'm not sure I did, but I'm sure they do. And it worked fine. It was a good set. And visually it was very striking. I noticed Pennant shot off a couple of times on that exit tunnel because my thought was that there would be more corridors in the Liberator. My thought was there would be more corridors and places in it. And we only ended up with sort of one corridor, and it was quite a big corridor, and I didn't think it needed to be so big. But it worked. It was fine. Production where there's a little group of you, which was David, the producer, Pennant, me, Robert Murray Leach, Chris, who were looking at the design aspect of it. It's a bit like being it's a bit like being in government. You when a decision is made that this is where we're going, you absolutely have to go along with that group decision, whether you totally agree with it or not. You absolutely have to pick up the baton and run with that decision, and not, so I was perfectly happy to go with the majority decision. Perfectly happy. I'd much rather get my own way, but having the decision having been made, that was it. So yeah, that was fine. It was a good set.
And thanks very much to Michael E. Briant for his thoughts on the web. Now, this is where we get our thinking caps on, and we're going to have a think about what happened next on the planet of the Lost, as I've called it. I'm going to go around each of us and find out what you thought. I don't know if you've been giving any thought to this through the day. I have. I've written something down, so that's unusual for me. But Philip, what are your thoughts on what happened next?
Well, it's actually interesting because it's one of the few occasions we actually have a successful rebellion. So Blake's all about creating rebellions in places, and here we actually have a successful rebellion. The Decimers rebel against their creators and murder them all in a horrible way. So in terms of what happens next, well, I wonder whether they're capable of surviving. So are these Decimers able to keep breeding, or do they wipe themselves out and aren't able to breed? We have very little to go on. But if it's a positive ending, then they all become happy little Decimers who breed lots, and they take over the whole planet. So there's lots of Decimers and etc. breeding all over the planet. So, but in terms of technology, in terms of what resources they have, I'm not sure the planet offers a lot, and I think it's going to be a pretty hard life for them.
Well, I'm going to go negative, and I'm going to say that they just didn't survive. They were bred for a purpose. They managed to rebel against these things, but then they're just going to attack each other, and they really are just little monsters that should have been wiped out.
That's very sad.
Okay. So it's all going to go into chaos, and it's all going to end badly. Goodbye.
I think they would have survived. Like at the start, all of this genetic engineering was meant to be about extending life. So I reckon they're fairly resilient, and I think that they were talking about how. I think Gila in particular was talking about how they were breeding a lot. Suddenly they were showing emotion, even though 5 minutes before that she said, oh, it's almost like they've got emotions. But regardless, it feels like they've got the basis there. So if there was, some food, if there was some food perhaps, I feel like they might have been, I don't know, they could have been strong enough to survive and maybe grow into Zygons, I don't know.
Yeah, I think they survived. I think they built treehouse villages up the top of the trees, possibly grew some grey fur, brown fur, and turned into Ewoks. Yeah, I think they survived. I don't think they necessarily need food. Like they said, they were genetically engineered, so they breed like rabbits, but they don't necessarily need to eat. So yeah, I think they'll live.
Well, you both touched on it a little bit there, and I think that the Decimas obviously evolved into Zygons, and they went back in time and invaded Earth. Yeah. There you go. End of story.
Makes sense.
So that's what happened next, obviously. Save the best till last. All right.
It is interesting to note that Blake, once again, just didn't care less. He came to a planet, he wiped out the people who rule the planet, he allows his rebellion to happen, and he just leaves and doesn't care. So, which is, it's an interesting state of play, because it's interesting because this episode really is about the ethical dilemma that it's being set up in terms of Blake's dilemma of, will he allow the crew to die in order to save the Decimas? I will say, I don't think there's any point in which you think he's going to do that. No. Avon doesn't care. Avon is just pragmatic. Just, what are you talking about? Just kill them and we go.
Yeah. Avon's like, you want to save these?
These are what you wanted to protect. They're fighting for their lives. Who is it?
Yeah, and so at the end, he said, seriously, at the end, this is what you wanted to save. Blake is a bit more conflicted by it, but you can see he's going to let them die. It was between him and the crew. There's no doubt he'll let them all be wiped out, even though it's a pretense that he's a bit more concerned about them. But as I said, the very fact that he'll just get teleport up and just go without a second thought of them, once again, I think does show his character that he has one purpose, which is the Federation. And even though he'll instill another rebellion, he loves rebellions wherever he goes, and this rebellion's successful, his whole mind is somewhere else.
I think I agree, because on the one hand, I feel like this episode was very much showing him having that ethical dilemma, but never for a minute did I think he would actually choose, anything except the one decision that would allow him and the crew to go on. But, it's a thing. I think the dilemma's set up there, but it's not explored properly. Like when the Decimas break in, like Blake just watches them, because Blake's pushed the button to do the beam to set free the web. So he's got what he wanted. So when the Decimas break in, he just lets them, rip the avatars to bits. Like he never stops. You barely see a reaction shot.
I think he was a little concerned for the Decimas, that shot where the Decimas crying.
No, I'm saying the avatars. He let the Decimas pull their avatars apart and never intervened or anything like that. No, they set up early that he's got empathy for the Decimas, but ultimately, like I said, because the Decimas came in and attacked, they took the ethical dilemma out of his hands. So it's a bit of not a cheat, but I just mean, if the point of the episode was to set up that ethical dilemma and show that Blake is more than just anti-Federation, he's more than just a rebel, but he's also a very sort of moral person. I feel like the opportunity wasn't fully explored.
You've got an Oronite there who's six people who've lived hundreds of years, amazing scientific knowledge, and he just lets them die, like without even a thought of, can we rescue them? Can we get them on the ship? Can we rescue Kelly's people? He just doesn't care.
Yeah,
he's just, I'm out of here. Bye.
I also think a beat is missed by the fact that Callie doesn't get to go down or really explore that. I mean, there's some plot point where they say she can't come down, but it's sort of like, well, if she's new to the ship and you want to find out more about her, then surely that would be an avenue that you could have taken as well.
It's an interesting scene because she's dressed, she's in the costume to come down, she's at the teleport bay, and it's, no, you can't come down, we basically don't trust you. And she sort of goes, oh, well, never mind. And off she trots. It was a strangely directed scene,
I thought that was really strange. I noticed that as well because she then just looks at Avon and just shrugs and goes, "Oh well, yeah, that's Blake," and walks off. I thought that was very
But
weird too.
I mean, I guess they used the fact that she'd been, possessed, she'd been taken over as the excuse. But ultimately, like the whole taken over thing, they could have taken over Blake any time, presumably, when he had the fuel cells. They could have. Why couldn't they take over the decimas? Were they too low function to be able to control it all? Like, I think the powers worked when it suited them, but not always. Why didn't they just why didn't they take over Blake and Avon and get them to fight the decimas?
It's just that it's her people. You know what I mean? I just kind of think that was a strange choice.
It was very strange to make because Avon contributes very little to the story other than being a counterpoint to Blake's, ethical decision, as I keep banging on about. So that's the only value he brings. So it would have been much more interesting if it was Kelly, particularly because she's so new.
Yeah, he's there to be tortured, so they'll hand over the power cells. Ultimately, they'll just make him suffer, and Blake will give in straight away. It easily could have been Callie, and would have possibly been more effective being Callie.
Or Callie could have been the solution. She could have been able to harness the telepathy and redirect it back at head of a jar, or do something like that. So she could have been the solution.
Yeah, or called them in. If she'd left the door unlocked and then she called the listeners in, the door's unlocked, come in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it would have made because that whole door thing is so.
The door thing's a really weird loophole,
seriously?
isn't it? Like a real plot hole. A real plot hole.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you can say, there's low power, so the door's not working. It's like, well, you'd bung one of the avatars with their zappy stick out the front or something.
Well, that took an interesting turn. All right, let's talk for a minute or two about Terry Nation tropes. Were there any others in there that you noticed throughout this particular story?
The first off, the decimas reminded me of the Exelons a little bit with the colour, the white colour and the streakiness. The power draining city. So there was a power draining city in Death of the Daleks. There's a power draining sort of web kind of thing. I think it's power draining anyway. So it was just those kind of little things. It was same director, same writer. I don't know. It was just those couple of things that this just reminds me of Death to the Daleks.
The other thing about Death of the Daleks, is in Death of the Daleks, one of the group of Exelons pay the outsiders to come and kill the other group. And they say, we will give you what you want, but we want you to kill them. And in the same way that one group of Terry Nation's villains here are getting Blake to come down to kill off the Decimas. So you actually have one group wanting the other group dead, who are connected and made by the same creature. So that was another one I saw in terms of Death of the Daleks.
Well, I suppose we talked about mutations, talked about genetic engineering, even the little bit of, it looked like a stake to me. The stake they put on Blake's hand to cure him. I mean, that looked like, it'd been snipped off a Dalek mutant, like the one that probably, Tom Baker had to throw off his neck in Genesis of the Daleks. I think I feel like maybe that's the problem. Genesis of the Daleks is the problem. I think I was expecting a kind of Tom Baker, do I have the right kind of, I expected the moral dilemma to go there with Blake, and it never kind of landed, or it didn't go that way. So maybe that's why I feel like that was a little bit lacking.
The little fungus thing that you said looked like a steak.
That's what I thought it was, like a little minute steak.
Yeah, that actually reminded me of all things Star Trek. There's an early episode of Star Trek in Series 1. What's it called? Something in the Dark. I can't remember what it is, where there is a fungus thing that sort of devours people by jumping over the top of them. But it's a lot bigger than that little bit of steak. So, but it looked similar. So I thought of that. Not that that's a Terry Nation trope, but anyway.
But doesn't Jo in Planet of the Daleks get some sort of fungus on her hand that has to be sprayed on or something?
Yeah, the green stuff. That's right. It's growing all over and would eventually grow over her body. That's right.
So this time it's used for good rather than for evil. It's just Terry recycling a variation on one of his many
And if you think of the keys of Marinus, not only have you got like head in a jar versus brain in a jar, but you've also got these people breaking up the lab in both cases.
And smashing everything up. Yep.
Yes, Barbara, the Decimus.
Yeah.
Barbara's a bit more attractive than Decimus.
The Decimus couldn't have pulled off a Cardi like Barbara did.
No, just when she goes ballistic at the Morpho brains, it's like the Decimus going ballistic with those two on the ground. Anyway.
With all that done and dusted, it is time to nominate our MVPs of the week.
I find it really hard to know who to do for this. I think Gareth Thomas gives a fine performance as always. Paul Darrow gives a fine performance, but probably not enough to really want me to give it to him. I'm pretty sure Michael E. Briant I did in the very first episode, so I'm not going to Michael. I'm actually going to go for the costume designer, Barbara Lane. I actually think that the costumes just added so much to this. So you've got the costumes on the Liberator, which are colourful and cheerful. You've got the new Robin Hood costumes for the planet. You have the beautiful slim designs worn by the two clones. You've got the Decima costumes, and you've got that amazing head of the tank. The variety that's in this episode is quite huge, and there's a lot of costumes to design and make, and I really love where it's going. So it's rare that I'd give it to a costume designer, but I just think the costumes really helped to make and lift this episode. So I'm going to go with Barbara Lane.
I'm going to do the camera work. I really like, not all of the camera work, but I really find like handheld camera stuff, the opening sequence where they're going down through the forest with the webs. I think some of the model shots with the web were really good as well. So I'm going to give it to the camera work this week.
Not Michael Bryant.
Well, yeah, I mean, I gave it to the directors. I gave it to the director before, so I'm giving it to the cameraman this time. Yeah.
I'd probably give it to Jan Chappell. I think Callie's really good in this episode, and I think she's having a lot of fun playing like spooky, telepathic, taken over person. So yeah, I think she does quite well in what could have been a bit hammy, reference Jenna and Bug Eyes when Jenna's taken over. So I think Jan Chappell does a good job.
Fantastic. I'm going an equal first. So I'm going to pick two, and that is Paul Darrow and Gareth Thomas, because I really feel that this is the start of the most interesting relationship, the interesting dynamic between the two that's going to continue on. And I really enjoyed what they did here. I enjoyed these early seeds of the relationship that was to come. And so that's my MVP, those two.
I'm not giving one. There's no performances that necessarily stand out for me in this. Like, they're all fairly good, right? I'd give it, the director has directed before. Maybe I'll give it whoever did the dressing in the forest. I'll give it to that person because that looked really good. The web.
That was Martin Collins. I think Martin Collins does a really great job as designer. He also designed the very first episode, which I really loved. His statues and pillars and the way he used space in the very first episode. I think once again he's done a great job here to just set up what is a believable alien landscape. It could have just been another quarry, but so far Blakes'7 is going out of its way to not do the Doctor Who quarries. Or if it's doing a quarry, it's dressing it up in a way that you can't tell.
Yeah, that won't last.
I'm actually very impressed by what they're doing. It won't last, I know.
Well, then I'll give it to Martin Collins for that set dressing because it was really good.
I looked him up. He was the designer for Sylvester McCoy episodes like Paradise Towers, Remembrance of the Daleks, and Battlefield. So there you go.
Let's do our scores. Scores out of 10. We'll go in the same order. Let's start with Philip.
7.5. So it's not quite the same 8s I was giving earlier on, or 9s. It's probably for me one of the. It's not a show I'll regularly go back and watch, because there's other things I prefer to watch rather than this. I'm much more into some of the stuff that's about to come, and when it finds its direction a bit more, which we'll see next week. I think is a top-notch episode, but it's still a very watchable episode, and I really enjoyed it. So 7.5.
8.5. It's probably one of my favourite episodes, but there are some little problems with it. But overall, I really like it. So 8.5.
I give it 7. I know there's much better to come. I reckon it's a bit. I really like so many aspects of it. When you break down the story, I think it's a kind of mid-range quality story. I think it's elevated by the direction and the design and the costumes, and but I think ultimately a 7.
I'm going to give this an 8 because it's a huge step up for me from Time Squad, and it would probably get more from me, but there are, as we've discussed throughout the episode, there's probably some ways the story could have been told better, particularly in regards to Callie, which I really like those ideas that you guys have come up with. But I think it's a fascinating story, and it's one that I will definitely go back to. How many standards, Todd?
Standard plus a half, so that's 7.5.
Nice.
I almost gave it an 8, but like what Troy says, when you start to look at all the pieces as a whole, there's little things in here. But like you said, Dwayne, it's a huge step up from last week, so I don't want to overcompensate and go like
me,
you know. Well, no, for the most part, it is an 8, but I kind of think it's just below that range, and it's in that 7.5 to 8 sort of thing where it's good, and I know what's to come, so I'm happy with that.
Excellent. So those are our thoughts on the web. Looking very much forward to Seek, Locate, Destroy next time. Thanks for joining us this time as a guest, Troy.
Thank you.
Loved having you about.
Thanks.
Okay, before we go, Troy, just give us a little plug for your book. You've got 2 books out now, but the second one's just been released recently. Tell us about them.
Thank you for this embarrassing situation. Yeah, my second teenage crime novel, Gus and the Burning Stones, is out now at all good bookshops.
That's it?
You're a renowned Australian author. We've got to celebrate that, Troy. That's why we have you on.
Renowned? I don't think so.
That's exciting.
Thank you. It is exciting. It's a privilege.
And they're 2 great books. I'm halfway through the second book, but I'm enjoying those as much as I enjoyed the first one, which I thought was brilliant.
Okay. Well, yeah, I look forward to hearing what you think of the second one when you're finished. Please let me know.
All right, until next episode, where we are going to be looking at Seek, Locate, Destroy. We'll catch you then.
See you soon.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on Blakes'7 The Way Back, starring Todd Bilby, Chris Beer, Dwayne Bunny, Philip Edney, and guest Troy Hunter. Thanks also to our special guest, director Michael E. Briant. Original theme by Joe Kramer. This episode, episode 5, The Web, was released in February 2026. It was recorded on the lands of the Wallumbdagul, Wurundjeri, Kamalaka, Jurag nations, also known as Sydney, Melbourne, and the island of Tasmania. Please like and subscribe and tell your friends. Join us next time with episode 6, Seek, Locate, Destroy, with our special guest being author Gary Russell.